Welcome to Bloom Day 60 Facilitation video. You're heading into a session where your clients have already spent 2 full days with you, and you've likely spoken with them at least twice between each session. By now, you're starting to build a strong relationship, and you've communicated with someone at this firm 7 or 8 times since your warm call. As you step into the room, professionalism is key. Punctuality, being over-prepared, arriving early, and taking pride in starting exactly at the top of the hour and finishing on time. As a professional facilitator, this is part of the standard you set. The room is ready. You probably still have table tent name cards on the table. At Bloom Day, 60 may be the last time you'll need them, but you can still use them as long as you like. Everyone has water, caffeine, and knows where the bathroom is. You're in a room with a whiteboard and a screen. All electronics are hooked up and functioning smoothly. Every participant has a pen in front of them and a Bloom Day 60 client workbook. There's nothing about the logistics, tech, or facility that is going to be distracting or get in the way. Before the session starts, you're also making sure lunch is taken care of. Sometimes this was handled the day before or via email 2 days ago, but if not, you're confirming it now. Once handled, you're passing it off to someone who will place the order and ensure it arrives on time. This is all about freeing up your headspace so you can be fully present with your client. You're stepping into this session with curiosity, excitement about their business, and full focus. Your phone is in airplane mode on Do Not Disturb in your bag or even in another room. You're entirely in their world. This often means that you've reviewed the day 30 what we could do better in the next session on day 60 notes. You'll open with sharing what each person said on day 30 to let them know that you're paying attention and that you care. Additionally, you can look back at your notes from your check-in call after the Bloom weekly meeting and your check-in call just before this session to get present to the client. The outcome is you want to get fully in their world. Every little comment you can make when they come in the room, like, "You guys were about to close that deal right after we wrapped up on day 30. Did you get it closed?" Every little thing like this is you investing in the relationship, allowing 100% of who you are to be thinking about and being with their situation. So you do all this, and in the meantime, you get all of your head trash out of the way. If there's stuff in your life that's distracting you, find a way to compartmentalize so that you can be fully present. Your own opportunities and obstacles will still be there at 5 p.m. You've got to put them on a shelf and find a way to be all in on their business, working like a strategic part of this team. Okay, so now the clock starts 8 o'clock or whatever time you've agreed to start, exactly on time. You say, "Welcome. I'm so excited about today. Knowing where you are at now and where you're going just has me all fired up. We have a big day ahead of us. This is going to move forward a number of conversations we've been circling. Let's go ahead and get grounded in where we are on the Bloom journey. We had our 90-minute discovery meeting here at Step 1. Then we did Bloom Day 1 almost 60 days ago, Bloom Day 30 almost 30 days ago, and we're here today on Bloom Day 60. These are the 4 setup days, Bloom Day 1, 30, 60, and Day 90, where we are laying the foundation, and then we'll go into the 5-day-a-year rotation. Remember, what we are doing is to be kept amongst the leadership team for now. We will have a specific plan for incorporating the entire organization later on. Then have them circle where they are on the Bloom journey in the client workbook. Next, you'll go through the agenda. After the Bloom growth journey, which we just did, we're going to do the check-in sheet. I see some of you have printed it and brought it along or have it on your phone or computer. During the check-in, we will celebrate the wins and we'll build the O&O list with the items that are not working and the opportunities available. We'll start with sharing expectations and outcomes. For Elevate Relationships, we'll share your homework from Bloom Day 30. One professional and one personal story you made up, and hear how those reflections have evolved. How has reframing those stories impacted the way you see yourself or your actions? We'll delve into the relationship traps and personal energy audit. For the core value discovery, we'll go through a core values discovery process together. They are characteristics of humans that we want to be in a relationship with. We're going to use it as a relationship filter for customers, employees, and vendors. We will also update KPIs. You've had some time to sleep on your KPIs set on day 30. We'll take a few minutes to review and update as needed. For the 5-year vision, we'll touch on it to see if it's still resonating after you've had 60 days to sleep on it. Next is the 3-year future. Today we'll set an inspiring future for your organization on the growth plan to help sell your team on staying with you and paint a picture of how much better it'll be in just a few short years. We'll create actionable annual goals today on the growth plan that will drive forward the highest priorities to get you to your 3-year future and inspiring future. Then we're going to go through and look at the ideal leadership team structure for the future that we worked on in Bloom Day 1 and Day 30. Usually, after you've slept on it and kicked around for 60 days, there will be meaningful changes and updates, and that is what we want to capture. After that, we'll go through and review the Bloom weekly meeting that we trained on Bloom Day 1 and Day 30. We'll make sure your use of the Bloom weekly meeting is significantly better starting right away, starting with your next meeting after today's session. It's that kind of deep, meaningful check-in. And I'm expecting meaty questions from you also. Finally, we will wrap up and share the highlights of today's session and next steps. We'll pay attention to the things we could do better in our Day 90 session, share our favorite and best part of the day, and give each other a compliment. Does this work for everybody in the room for how we spend our time today? It's a beautiful, meaty agenda, and I want to move fast and be interesting and fun. Is everybody good? Great, we just reviewed the Bloom growth journey and outcomes so we can check that first item off. Next, you'll have the team share their expectations and outcomes for the day from the first question on the check-in sheet. You are listening for anything that does not line up with the agenda for the day and inviting them to align their expectations with the outcomes for today's session. Continuing on the remainder of the check-in sheet, set a 3-minute timer and have each team member share the Celebrate the Wins section. Once everyone is shared, set another 3-minute timer and continue to the Bloom Weekly section. Write down any questions they have about the Bloom Weekly and KPIs so you can answer those questions during the Bloom Weekly section at the end of the day. And be sure to add any people O and O's. As you're doing that, ask them casually, "Hey, did you guys talk about the people we put on the O and O list last time? Did you make any inspiring, decisive decisions?" Because remember, decisive people moves are one of the secrets to success and to growing faster. So they all go round and do that. Maybe it takes 2 minutes, maybe 3. Given that you're doing all that, including adding people issues to the O and O list, they don't have to use it all the time. Don't sit there with dead time or force people to dig for more just to fill the space. They can just say what needs to be said here, and of course, the outcome will already be at the bottom of the sheet. Okay, great job. You're doing amazing. Once complete, have the team return to page 1 and check off check-in. Next up is the Elevate Relationships section for Bloom Day 60. Day 60 is arguably some of the most impactful work we do in the first 90 days. Let's start talking about what you have in the room. As always, you will have your client workbook. For this day, we have a little bit more in the workbook than we normally do. We always try to keep the workbook fairly light because we want people to be present and engaged, not looking down at bits of paper when they're doing the Elevate work. You will find 2 pages in the client workbook. One is a visual for what we are calling the relationship traps with a bit of space for your team to write, and the same again for the Elevate around the person energy audit. Then you have your version of the client workbook with coach notes. Just to remind ourselves, this is basically setting out the heartbeat of the session. It will tell you what you need to prepare in advance, what the key messages you need to land are, and what takeaways you need to leave with the client. For example, there are specific types of homework we want you to complete. If you ever have a moment where your mind goes blank, you can have confidence that all the necessary information is always there, ready for you to refer to and share. There is also the slide deck, which contains just these 2 images. In the notes section of each slide, you will find the coach notes available for you. These are for your reference only. The client cannot see them, so you can rely on them whenever you need. Finally, we have the facilitator guide. This document includes everything we could think of to ensure you can deliver this successfully. This is broken down into 3 sections that are color-coded. At the beginning of every exercise or module, you will find a section in blue that explains why this module is included, the context, and what we are trying to achieve. This helps you understand the end goal when working with the client. Anything in green is suggested language for introducing exercises and transitioning between them. It is meant as a guide, not a script. Please internalize it and find your own words. If you use it verbatim, it may come across as inauthentic. The sections in orange contain tips, tricks, and pro suggestions to enhance facilitation. These may include environmental considerations or prompt questions for moments when discussion naturally slows. Each facilitator guide begins with things to consider in advance of the session. The first reminder is about the homework set on Bloom Day 30. They were asked to work on Stories We Make Up, where they were invited to complete 2 stories, one personal and one professional. They should have been working on these over the past 30 days. People are busy and sometimes don't prioritize these tasks. Sending a reminder at least 5 working days before the session lets them know you're looking forward to hearing about their stories and what they've done. This gives them a chance to remember and take action. Even if they only make partial progress, they will come in with something rather than feeling unprepared when others have completed it. The second point is the environmental setup. As discussed on day 30, we will be operating in a circle again. Coordinate with their local administrators or facilities team to ensure they book a room that allows for a circle setup. Many standard meeting rooms come with fixed, immovable tables, which can make this difficult. Planning ahead helps avoid this issue. If there are rooms where we can move the tables, or if they are large enough to carve out a space to the side, that works well. The ideal spacing between chairs is about 10 to 12 inches, ensuring that with 4, 6, 8, or 10 people, they are not too close together. If an immovable table is in the room, then you will have to adjust accordingly. For the session itself, we are welcoming them back and reopening the circle. Since Elevate was explained on Bloom Day 1 and the circle was introduced on Day 30, there is no need to repeat those explanations to them. By now, they are getting into the rhythm of things. A circle usually works for up to 15 to 20 people max, which is much larger than the recommended leadership team size. Beyond that, it might become difficult, depending on the space. I wouldn't break them into 2 circles, because then people would have their backs to each other, which creates an exclusionary experience. Instead of one shared experience, you'd end up with 2 disconnected groups, which creates a new barrier rather than removing one. If I were in a room where I couldn't fit everyone into a circle, but could keep them all around a table, I'd keep them around the table rather than forcing 2 circles. The purpose of the Welcome Back Circle session is to transition them into the space, get the circle set up, and reconnect them to the positive energy from the previous sessions. The goal is to bring them back into a mindset where they are fully engaged in deep inner work. You will introduce the session, and the first step is to have them rebuild the circle. This is their code of operation for all Elevate work moving forward. There are 2 reasons for this. First, it is part of the ritualization of Elevate. The more they follow this psychological pattern, the quicker they transition into the right mindset. Second, building the circle is a non-hierarchical, purposeful activity. It doesn't matter if someone is the founder or the newest team member, everyone is working together to create the environment they will operate in for the next session. Once they are set up and comfortable, do a quick reminder about confidentiality and consent. While day 60 typically doesn't lead to deep personal oversharing, maintaining standard rigor ensures that everyone acknowledges the importance of confidentiality. Then you're on to the breathing exercise. I've demonstrated this before, and as you continue doing these with clients, you might start feeling more confident and want to adjust your approach. We're going to do a variation of box breathing. Box breathing is normally you inhale for 4, hold for 4, and then exhale for 4. So let's practice this together as a refresher. First, have a really upright posture. One of the things I suggest is to imagine you've got a rope at the top of your head and you just pull that up and it immediately makes everybody sit up. Feet are planted on the ground. Relax your hands, usually make a small fist and put them on your knees. Then they close your eyes. Take 2 or 3 seconds to settle. Then start inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. For exhale. 2, 3, 4, and so on. You do that 4 times. Take a few seconds just to pause with your eyes closed, then slowly open your eyes. This is how you'll share with your client. You don't have to follow the same script every time. A breathing exercise will always be part of the session, but if you've done your own meditative breathing work, feel free to incorporate variations if you think your clients are ready for it. Once the breathing exercise is complete, we move into 2 reflective pieces. The first is the standard reflection. What did you take away from day 30? Moments of insight and growth. We are looking for short, sharp reflections, aiming for 2, 3, or 4 responses in the room. This process helps them reconnect to their past insights and maintain momentum. On day 30, just like on day 1, they wrote down their takeaways. This is the time to revisit that and reinforce the positive progress they've made. You captured their language as closely as possible last time, and now you will play it back to them. Remind them this is what they said last time. If they don't bring up certain points on their own, make sure what you share resonates with them. This helps reconnect them to the positive energy from their previous session. That completes the first reflection. The second reflection is linked to the homework. Ask them to report out, as this is as much about accountability as it is about reflection. They should now share the stories they worked on. Since each person has 2 stories and there may be 6, 7, or 8 people in the room, this could easily become a long exercise. To keep it focused, have them share just one story. Some people won't have done the work, and that's fine. The goal is to make sure at least 2, 3, or 4 people share something meaningful, focusing on the most impactful shift they experienced. Encourage the group to reflect on what they heard, what takeaways stood out, what lessons resonated, and how it has impacted them. Some people will choose to talk about their own story and the difference it made. Even if others haven't done the work, you'll find that people will start reflecting on what was shared. They might say, that was really interesting, what Sarah said about this or what Ranjit said about that. That's relevant to my life. I want to go away and work on some of these things. Even those who didn't complete the work will start drawing lessons and feel motivated to begin. Keep this exercise brief. If it turns into a long discussion, you'll lose half an hour. The goal is to get some reflections out there and move forward. Once the homework accountability report out is complete, transition into setting the scene for the day. Day 60 marks a shift. After day 90, we enter a new phase, the all-organization gathering. This is a world powered by Bloom Growth OS. By then, there will be a clear what, how, and why the 5-year vision, values, and business plans. The organization will start to feel different. It's going to feel energizing and disciplined, but it will also place new demands on leaders. As leaders, we need to be ready to lead, particularly from an energy perspective, and focus on what truly matters. Day 60 is about leader energy, helping them break free from limiting beliefs that lead to suboptimal relationships and ensuring they manage their energy effectively. The goal is to focus on what adds the most value to both themselves and the business, while also increasing fulfillment. We will start with the relationship traps to address limiting beliefs and relationships, followed by the energy audit to refocus on what truly matters. Analytics-driven individuals want to understand the session structure up front. If you don't provide it, they'll spend the first part of the session waiting for you to explain what's coming next. So be sure to clearly outline the agenda before moving forward. Now we begin the first exercise, relationship traps. Fundamentally, we all hold limiting beliefs, and these beliefs are not truths or facts. They often stem from childhood, inherited from parents, or shaped by formative experiences. These beliefs manifest in different ways, and today we are focusing on those linked to energy traps. The idea is that a belief doesn't just have a cost because it is suboptimal for us in our relationships, but it also has a payoff that traps us. This reward mechanism keeps us locked in the belief. One example is martyr syndrome, where someone believes they must always sacrifice themselves for the team. They are the only ones staying late, doing extra work, while others seem to coast. They feel unrecognized and unrewarded. The payoff is clear. There is a sense of moral superiority, a feeling of being the one who keeps everything running. But the cost is exhaustion, unmet personal needs, and growing resentment. This creates unnecessary tension with colleagues and prevents high performance. Another example is the need for approval, where self-worth is tied to external validation. This is common in relationships with a boss, where recognition feels euphoric, like a dopamine hit, and creates a craving for more. The challenge is that praise is not always forthcoming. Many people don't naturally express gratitude, which can leave someone feeling anxious, emotionally dependent, and questioning their worth. This can make them appear insecure or lacking confidence, which in turn affects their relationships. These are the types of limiting beliefs we are bringing to the surface. Many of them are deeply ingrained, and the goal is to help people recognize and release these traps so they can redirect their energy into what truly matters, building stronger connections and more meaningful relationships. These realizations can be incredibly powerful. You need to have your own version of the story, to have thought it through and worked through it yourself. If you come from a consulting background or don't have a personal example, you can borrow a relevant story to make the concept real. It's not ideal, but if you're struggling, at least have an example you can speak to. You can also say, this isn't my story, but it's a great example. Next, we have a worked example. You can show the slide and let them read it, but for this one, I usually draw it out myself. This is a variation of the martyr syndrome, just a simpler articulation. I always end up doing more work than everyone else. I'm first to arrive and last to leave. I'm the person who gets stuff done around here. The payoff is clear, feeling superior and in control. But the cost is the impact on personal relationships. You're simply not around to maintain intimacy and connection with the people you love and your friends. Thinking isn't free. We only have so much energy in our tank, and when it runs out, if we're not replenishing it through meditation or other means, we risk burnout and mental health struggles. This is the one I always draw because it's easy to understand. But as we say, you should have your own. If yours is more impactful, go with that. Now that it's been explained with examples, we move to the exercise. I invite them to think about present frustrations, complaints, or issues at work and consider the beliefs that keep coming up. I try to get them to come up with at least 3 because the first one is often weak and we want better ideas to work with. I've told people before to write down the trap, and they'll just write the label like, I have an overly indexed provider mechanic, without listing the payoff and cost. We need them to have all 3. What's the belief? What's the payoff? What's the cost? People typically need 2 to 3 minutes for this. The first belief comes right away, then they have to think a little harder for the others. But we're only asking for 9 bullets in total. It doesn't take a lot. Once they've done that, try to get them to start sharing those traps. You're not capturing much, just writing down some key points on a whiteboard. One interesting thing is that sometimes over 80% of the group will share the same trap or challenge. When that happens, it can actually be useful to work on it as a group. It becomes a bonding exercise. One reason to capture and scan for commonality is to see if there are patterns worth paying attention to. If the same traps keep coming up, it could just be random, but there are also 2 possible reasons for it. The first is how they're recruiting talent. Maybe they're over-indexing on a particular talent profile. From a neurodiversity perspective, if they're hiring the same kinds of people repeatedly, is that actually healthy for the organization? Are they getting diversity of thought? That's a good question to discuss with a CEO or founder afterward. The second possible reason is culture. Is there something within the company's culture that's reinforcing or creating this trap? That's another useful challenge to bring up with leadership, something that might be shaping these patterns and making them more common. Get everything up on the board, capture it, and have it there to reflect on. In some places where people do similar exercises, they immediately jump into action planning. How do we fix this? But I think that's the wrong approach. There's a key step before that. These beliefs run deep. Some of them go all the way back to childhood. Mine, for example, I inherited from my dad. If this were something we could just fix instantly, we'd have done it already. It's not that simple, and it's important to recognize that before trying to move straight to solutions. We have to help people visualize what a world could look like beyond that trap, where the reward is higher than the payoff that's keeping them stuck. There are 3 questions I tend to pose to get them thinking. The first is, what would it look like if you chose to release this complaint or belief? What would change? The second is, if you could release it, how would that allow you to approach the situation differently? What's the new story? What's the new approach? And then, if you had that, what would you be able to do with the energy, time, and mental space you freed up? So they can start applying this to their own challenge. Ideally, they've done some of the work already, but this helps them see what it could look like. Let them reflect for a few minutes, just quickly, since they're only picking one trap. Then capture the key messages and headlines. It'll be interesting to see how expansive that thinking becomes, and reflect that back to them. Wow, that sounds fantastic. You're actually visualizing a future that isn't just theoretical or academic, it's something real and credible. Almost commend them on their ability to see that vision. How good would it feel to actually live your life that way? Only then do we go into action planning. Now, when you get to this stage, because you've heard me say this before, especially coming from a consulting background, people love listing out 74 action items that end up sitting on a shelf, never getting done. They're always happening months down the line and nothing ever really changes. What we want is for them to commit to at least one action between now and Bloom Day 90 that they will actually do. Some of you might feel that's not enough. You might want 3 actions or even push them to document 5. But don't go beyond 5. After that, things just get lost. The key is to get them to write it down, and once they have, to share it. You're capturing it on the board, but not because you need it documented. It's more about the commitment. It's like carving it in stone, reinforcing the idea that this is not just a promise to themselves, but also to each other. Once it's all captured, you sit back and say, well done, guys. This is the first step in letting go of something that has probably been weighing on you for years, if not decades. Then you set the expectation. I'm really excited to hear at the next day 90 check-in how you've done in addressing one of these traps. Then we move into the final major module, the personal energy audit. The premise behind this is twofold. And I'll start with a secondary, slightly less important, but still worth noting point, given how this fits with the rest of Bloom Growth OS. When you look at folks like Dan Sullivan and others in the 10x or exponential growth space, there is a relentless focus on the need to shed everything that isn't in complete alignment or pursuit of you transitioning your business or driving exponential or at least significant growth. If you want to scale exponentially, you have to be intentional about where your energy goes. You have to be willing to let go of things that really aren't value adding in that space and also get really clear about what you uniquely do and what other people do. So there is an agenda from an entrepreneurial perspective about shedding things that aren't necessarily in service of your highest goal. The primary reason is that ultimately, if we work on things that we enjoy, that fulfill us, that we're good at, and that make us productive, unsurprisingly, our life at work is far more fulfilling and joyous. And what you tend to find is that all the things you and I hate in jobs, somebody else somewhere will love. And often those people not only love it, but they might do it faster, better, and cheaper than you would. So it makes sense that if we can find the things that drain us, we can find some other way of satisfying that need without it having to be us. I would probably position this module very much in that light. And I'd give an example, and therefore I would encourage you to have an example of an activity that drains you but that someone else can do better. So my one is analytics. I can do analytics. I hate doing analytics. I have a guy in a very far off, distant country who I give a small amount of money to, and he does it in about half the time and 3 times as well. He loves it. I hate it. I can now use that time to go off and do things like strategy, business development, or even training you wonderful folks on these things. So it frees me to do so much more. So that's my example. I would encourage you to have your own. If you're struggling and just want to borrow an example, further down the facilitator guide, we have examples of activities that are draining and what you could do to resolve some of them. By all means, refer to them if you wish. If people are still struggling a little bit, sometimes I like to use an analogy of the organization as a machine. Machines only work effectively when the right cogs are in the right place, doing the right things at the right time. Now, if you take a cog out and put the wrong piece in, it might clunk along, it might be less effective, inefficient, or even worse, it might break. So we want to make sure as a team that we're working on the right things at the right time. That resonates with some people when they think about it. So having done all of that, we then want to get into the exercise. The first thing is to build their own personal energy maps. This is about mapping out over the course of a working week the big buckets of activity that they do and identifying which ones energize them and which ones drain them. They can do this however they want, whether through cartoons, heat maps, line graphs, it's up to them. We'll give them a couple of examples, which I'll share in a minute, but the format is flexible. In the day's 60 client workbook and on the slide deck, you see 2 columns. The column on the left is gives energy and the column on the right is drains energy. You will share with your client, you will need your calendar. This is usually on the small computer in your pocket. You can have it airplane mode and still have your calendar work. Don't turn it on, have it start distracting you. Get your calendar and I'm going to give you 10 minutes of silence. And you're going to go through your calendar from the last 30 days and you'll find how you are spending 80% of your energy. You'll either put it in the left column gives energy or the right column drains energy. The left column is the stuff that gives you energy. These are things you are naturally good at and you enjoy doing. You love do it. You'd do it for free sometimes for a friend, and you're good at it. You take pride in your work, and you're so delighted to be doing tasks like this. The other column is drains energy. This is stuff that dread, procrastinate, avoid, and don't like doing. You often do poor quality work and turn it in late. That's how much you dread, procrastinate, and avoid this stuff. Now, I am going to give you 10 minutes of perfect silence to go through your calendar, which is where you are going to identify how you are spending at least 80% of your professional energy, and you'll put them in these 2 columns. Then we're going to do some paired sharing. Then we are going to look at what we can stop, automate, delegate, SAD. That is the right column. For now, we want to keep this to professional energy. Of course, if you are doing something personal in the right column, stop, automate, or delegate that stuff too. You could spend half an hour on this exercise and people would fill the time. But generally, in any facilitation, if you give people more than 20 minutes, they'll end up on their phones, chatting, or doing anything other than what you actually want them to do. In reality, they only spend about 10 to 15 minutes on the task itself. Actually, in just 6 or 7 minutes, you'll get most of the value. It keeps them focused and engaged. Now, in an ideal world, if we had plenty of time, we'd have everyone stand up and walk through their energy maps. This would not only help them refine their own insights, but also act as an education for the team. They would finally understand what energizes and what drains their colleagues, which can be really useful for collaboration. If time isn't an issue and you're working with a small group of 3, I'd encourage you to do this. However, time is usually limited. If you have 6 or 8 people in the leadership team, I'd recommend putting them into pairs so that they still have a proper conversation without feeling rushed. In pairs, each person walks through their map while the other listens and reflects. In their pairs, each person takes turns walking through their map while the other gives reflections. What patterns do they see? Help them sharpen. Whoever wrote it, the other person helps refine their thinking a bit more. Also, if there's a bit of time, they can start looking at the things that drain them and begin kickstarting the ideation process. What could they do to address this or bolster their energy? So they have that time just to share with each other. And then again, if we had time, we would do a full report out, and that would be brilliant. But what we're really using here is almost paired coaching. We're just trying to get one person to help the other really hone and sharpen their thinking and kickstart stuff rather than sharing it all back. So instead, we're going to go straight into some individual working time. And what we now want them to do is to think about what they could do to remove those draining activities. So hopefully the pairings kickstarted some of that, but now they're going to spend some quality time for about 10 minutes, in fact, to do it. And we're going to give them a framework, the SAD framework, which I like because we're removing things that make them sad. And it is deployed. These are categories of levers, and it is deployed in this order: stop, automate, delegate. And I'll go through why. The first is, obviously, if an activity can literally be stopped, then we just stop it. We're not going to automate it or delegate it to someone. It should just be stopped. A good example of this is a habit people have of going to meetings where they don't have any accountability, any responsibility, any decision-making rights whatsoever. But people invite them because they like having them around or they're a senior person. A clear stop is going to any meeting where I don't have a role or an input, and that clears out a whole load of time. So that's a classic example of a stop. If we can't stop it, we want to try and automate it if we can. So if it's high volume, low complexity, highly repetitive, this is something we should automate. Expense submission is a great example. People spend hours completing these, and now you can just use an app, take a photo, and off it goes. So again, automate. And then if you can't stop it and you can't automate it, then explore delegating it. And delegation is something where everyone assumes an employee or someone within their orbit. It could be a contractor, it could be a vendor. Just get them to think more expansively about some of these things. So you're going to give them 10 minutes. Some people will find this really easy. Some people will struggle. I've written down here some examples of things that could be stopped, automated, and all these sorts of things. You will have your own, and I encourage you to reflect on your own time in your extensive careers where you've decided enough is enough, and I'm either stopping, automating, or delegating. So they'll now have all that written down in front of them. Again, if you've got time, you can encourage them to start sharing this if you want to. What I intend to do is to continue this journey, and I start to say to them, okay, let's start calculating how much time you think you would save. If you did all the interventions you put down, what would they look like? And just give them a few minutes to calculate the time savings. Again, remind them this is about a gut rough order of magnitude. This isn't going to be 100% accurate. And remind them that some recurring things will happen not just once in a week, it will happen multiple times. Give them 5 minutes. And once they've got that, now we're into share mode. While they're writing and thinking all those bits and pieces, I want you to go up to the whiteboard or the flip chart and draw a mini table. You'll draw a line across the top and you'll write name, stop, automate, delegate, and total, and then the rows write everybody's names. When they've had their time, especially if you've got a bit of time, tell them to read out by category what the intervention is and what the outcome is. So you'll write the results up there. And then at that point, pause. Because when you total it all up, you'll find that as a minimum, there will be tens of hours that could be saved on that list. If there's a larger team, it could even go to 3 figures. It could be in the low hundreds. That is an incredible epiphany moment for people when they realize that there are 80 hours a week across a team of 4 or 5 people that could be reallocated to something far more impactful. Seeing that is really eye-opening. One of the things I would encourage you to do is to have a look at those categories. If you're finding that one category is massively over-indexed, then explore why. So, for example, if everybody's got tons in Automate, you may ask why this is. And they might respond, oh, we're expecting to get a new CRM, a new ERP, a new this, a new that. And you'd respond, wow, that's a massive investment profile attached to that. So do we feel this is credible? It's good to do a quick check-in to make sure people aren't just living in a fantasy land about what could happen. At any rate, you'll get a number at the bottom. If that number seems overinflated based on what you've heard, you can say, right, if it's 100 hours, let's just take 50%. Let's assume that 50% is achievable. Do you all agree? And everyone's like, yeah, we think we could hit 50%. And you say, right, so it's 50 hours. Great. Wonderful. So now, what are we going to do with this time? You've now potentially freed up 50 hours. That means Sarah's got 5, Mohammed's got 10, etc. Now, spend some time writing down what you would spend that time doing. What are the highest value activities you could focus on? More importantly, what real value will you add to the business? If I asked you right now, what if I gave you half a day a week to focus on something meaningful? I'm sure you'd come up with 17 things immediately that you wish you were doing instead of the admin crap we all have to put up with. So let it flow and give them some time. While they're doing that, it's also good to create another table. If you've got 2 flip charts, use one for what they're getting rid of and the other for what they're moving towards. It makes for a powerful side-by-side comparison. On the second chart, list their name, what they're going to do, and the number of hours they've freed up. Once they're done, have them share and capture their responses. Then just stand back and invite them to look at the difference between the two. Wow, that feels like a different world. That feels exciting. That feels like something you'd actually want to be part of. This is where we ask them a key question. There are 2 questions. One is definite and the second is optional, which I'll explain in a moment. The first question is, if you could make that switch from dropping all that activity to living in this new world you just described, what difference would that make in your daily life? How would that make you feel? And you'll hear responses like, exciting, thrilling. Typically, this would make me want to come to work on Monday. It's that type of language, and you'll hear it. What you're really doing is helping them internalize the power of this new world. You're making them sink into it, absorb it, and want to strive for it. Sometimes people will speak purely from an individual perspective. In that case, you ask, okay, and what benefits would this bring to your business? You want them to recognize things like, well, if we're more efficient doing XYZ, I could convert 1 more customer a week, which would increase revenue by X, or I could spend 20% more time doing this, which would lead to. You want them to connect it back to the business benefit, not just the personal gain. This is just a short facilitated piece to help them internalize it. But if you notice a common theme, like everyone mentioning expense automation, that might be a sign to say, this sounds like a project. This sounds like something for an O&O list. Maybe we should assign a lead and start working on it. Once that's done, the next step is commitment to action. They now have a vision of what they're letting go of and what they're moving toward. Now, you get them to quickly brainstorm what they will do to move this forward. They should capture at least 1, 3, or at most 5 concrete actions. And again, carved in stone, carved in blood, this is what they will commit to doing before the next check-in in 30 days. By then, hopefully, there will be at least a couple of movements toward progress. Finally, we close out Elevate Relationships for Bloom Day 60. As always, when we do this, people will have shared some personal, vulnerable insights. It's important to acknowledge, compliment, and reward them, to verbally recognize that they are taking real steps forward and doing good work. And the more you create that virtuous circle, the more they feel validated and acknowledged for being vulnerable, and the more likely they are to continue sharing with us moving forward. So you should feel proud of what you've done today. It's been brilliant. Then we move into a short, sharp reflection. What did they take away from today? What were the highlights and key insights? Capture their responses as verbatim as possible, since this will serve as a connection point when we check back in on day 90. Now we set the homework. We want to remind them that Bloom Day 90 is a big moment. It's a key milestone in Bloom OS because it's the last session before the all-org gathering. It marks the pivot point between the old world and the new world that is powered by Bloom OS. We want them to think about some of those higher elevated concepts. While we're not covering why, how, what values or 5-year vision inside Elevate, given their elevated mindset, they should reflect on whether any fine-tuning or honing needs to be done before these ideas are finalized. More importantly, they need to think about messaging to the organization. I'm not saying that if you screw up the all-org gathering, it's all blown, but if it doesn't land well, if you haven't carefully considered both heart and head messaging, then instead of this being a grand, inspiring moment, you'll spend the next few weeks or months doing damage control to rebuild enthusiasm and excitement. We want the all-org gathering to move beyond just rational messaging and be heart-centered as well, something that deeply connects with people. That's what we want them to start thinking about. Then invite them to continue doing the personal energy audit exercise and remind them in particular to complete their relationship trap audit as well. There's going to be a lot leading up to day 90. Since day 90 is only 60 minutes of Elevate, at a minimum, we want them to complete the relationship trap for a report out. If you want to signpost both the personal energy audit and the relationship trap audit as report outs, then that's absolutely fine. And then we close out the circle. It's ideal if you can have them literally exit the circle and go back to standard seating. It bookends the experience, entering Elevate, exiting Elevate, creating a clear distinction that this was a dedicated space for that mindset. Some of you may prefer working in the circle the whole time, while others may feel it's not worth rearranging the room. I get that. If you stay in that space, it's not the end of the world, but I'd still encourage you to move them back out so that the circle remains reserved for Elevate relationships only. That concludes this section. You can return to page 1 to check off Elevate relationships. Next, you're diving into core values discovery. A lot of what I would normally say as a coach is already in the bullet points of the client workbook. So it's completely fine to read through these and just elaborate on them. This is a discovery, not a creative process. These are things that have always been true about this organization. I don't have the answers, you do. These are the best characteristics of people who work here. Look at the next section. These are the characteristics of people you want to be in a relationship with. They will serve as a relationship filter for customers, employees, and vendors. 3 or 4 is the right number. Every team I've worked with that tries to have 5 or 6 can't remember them. I'll tell you personally, I used to have 6 family core values, and my husband and I had to consolidate them down to 4 because we couldn't even remember all 6. We are not looking for generic or aspirational. They are not givens. You're not going to say things like smart or shows up to work on time or integrity. Think about it like this. If you're screening someone in an interview process, you'll know if they're smart within the first 10 minutes of talking to them. You'll confirm their integrity during reference checks. And whether someone shows up to work on time is self-evident. Core values are 3 or 4 fundamental characteristics of the kind of people you want in your organization. People you want to be in relationship with. Here's what I want you to do first. On the left-hand side of the Now section, write down 3 to 5 people who either currently work here or have worked here in the past that if you had 100 of them, you could take over the whole industry. People who were just incredible to work with, people you'd love to be around. Now, on the right-hand side, across from each name, write down 1 or 2 characteristics, behaviors, or traits that made that person stand out. What made them awesome as a teammate? What made them a great coworker? Write those words down. First thing you do is give people 5 minutes to write their lists. Then you say, all right, let's go around the room and put all the names up. You start listing names on the whiteboard. There are always a lot of duplicates, especially with current employees. Place dots next to the names that appear multiple times. Once the list is up, pause and say, that's pretty interesting. Hey, why doesn't someone take a picture of this list? Sometimes I have clients who take this list and give everyone on it a $25 gift certificate to their favorite lunch spot near the office. The thing about a $25 gift certificate is that no one goes to lunch alone. All you do is hand it to them one-on-one and say, hey, your name came up in a really positive way when we were talking about who's a great part of our culture. We wanted to give you this. They tell a couple of coworkers, they go out to lunch together, and suddenly this exercise sparks something positive in the culture. But really, the main goal is to identify the characteristics that made these people stand out. Now, you start making a list of characteristics. This list is going to be huge. You'll probably get 30 different characteristics at first. As you write them on the board, make sure you're combining duplicates. If it's the exact same word, put a dot next to it. If it's a synonym, put a / next to it and write it together. That's the first iteration. Now you say, these usually group down into about 7 to 9 core categories of human characteristics. Then you start refining. All right, let's take that one with 3 dots next to it. What words go with this one? Say you have caring on the board. Ask what other words belong in the same category. Somebody might add loving, another person writes goes above and beyond. You say, that's another way of saying caring, right? Then someone else writes goes the extra mile. Ask, does that fit in this category? You have a short discussion. Yes? No? Maybe? Don't waste too much time, just make a decision and move on. Then go to the next one. All right, give me another word with a couple of dots that's completely different from caring. Someone says honesty. Now you start again. Okay, does integrity go with that? What's the third one over here? What can be combined with this one? You'll end up with 7 to 10 things written on the board, each with a group of words, sometimes 5 to 7 words long, all separated by /. They all mean essentially the same thing. Once you have 7 to 9 categories written up there, start erasing the initial words as you transfer them over. Now, the goal is to narrow it down to 3 or 4 categories. This is where you eliminate generic, aspirational, or permission to play values. For example, integrity, honesty. That's something you'll screen for with background checks. Smart and intelligent? You'll figure that out just by talking to someone in an interview. Responsiveness? Measure that during the hiring process by tracking how quickly candidates respond and complete assignments after the first interview. There are lots of other ways to figure these things out. The goal is to get to 3 or 4 categories that truly define the characteristics of people you want working here. You'll organize all the words into their right spots so that 4 main categories emerge. Each one still has 3 to 7 supporting words underneath it. Then ask, is there a thesis word in each of these lines? One word that best represents each category? That becomes the core value, the word that sums up the entire line. The other words are supporting terms that clarify its meaning. During this process, some words will move from one line to another. You'll notice some words just don't fit quite right in one category, but make perfect sense in another. Move them around until everything feels clear and concise. Erase anything unnecessary and keep all the meaningful words on the board so you can take pictures before erasing. As a coach, pull out your phone and snap pictures midway through the process, especially before making big changes. Ultimately, you're going to underline the thesis word in each of the 4 categories. Then say, all right, so this is our best work today on what we'd call this core value. It includes all these supporting words. For homework, when they come back on Bloom Day 90, request they bring real examples from their past, stories of this core value in action. Times when people on the team have displayed these behaviors, characteristics, or traits. Come up with some true stories from the recent past in your business. That's the homework. Ask, who's taking this on? Do you want to split it up, or does one person want to own it like a project? Please don't spend more than a couple of hours on this, but do spend a couple of hours and bring some core value stories to share on Bloom Day 90. And if you cannot come up with stories, that might be a sign that these values aren't actually true of your organization. It's a bit of a filter, and it's also a way to ensure clarity. You need to be able to articulate what these values are and what they aren't so that they're really clear when shared. In addition to the core value stories that show these values in action, do a little extra homework. Write down exactly what these values are not. Sometimes, in defining what it isn't, you get much clearer on what it is. Next, take those 4 core values and enter them into Bloom software, wherever the core values section is in the new plan. Pop them in there. Hold on to that photo of all the supporting words. Those will really help. Encourage the team to take a picture. This process should feel energizing when done right. It usually takes about 90 minutes. If a client already has core values, they're usually not right. They're marketing phrases, and they're usually the things they wish were true, and only half of them are actually true. Here's what you do. Go through the exercise exactly as we just discussed. Then, at the end of the exercise, bring out their existing core values and see where they fit. Usually, they'll have something like 7 or 9 core values, an absurd number. Ask the room if anyone can name them all without pulling them up on their phone. Nobody will be able to. Then you'll see that maybe 2 or 3 of their existing values actually match up with the ones the team just discovered. Most of the time, the old values are overlapping, repetitive, aspirational, or just obvious. Things like integrity, smart, honest. The stuff that should be a given. So, at this point, you trash the old core values list and get clear that the two important ones are already captured in the four real core values they just created. Occasionally, you'll find one existing value that wasn't mentioned in discovery, and the team is passionate about keeping it. If they sell you on how important it is and how it's magical for their culture, you might decide to add it in. At that point, you're gonna give in and let them have it as part of the core values, even though it didn't come out of the exercise. Or it might become their fifth one instead. Then you say, let's try to narrow this down to 4 when we're together on Bloom Day 90. But for now, bring your core value stories and an example of what it's not for each of these core values. We'll take the next pass through then. That's how I handle it, so they feel heard, and I don't just throw out their old values outright. But usually these are poorly defined and don't work well as a real filter for customers, employees, and vendors. I ask them, this one here, do you fire people if they don't live up to this? And they say, no, half our people aren't this. Okay, well, we're developing these core values as a tool that's different than that. This is a filter for customers, employees, and vendors. For example, if respectful is one of your core values, that means firing customers who aren't respectful. That means having a conversation with their leadership to see if they actually want to become a respectful client. If not, we're letting them go. You're making your life better by surrounding yourself with people who align with your values. You can think of this selfishly. You get to choose the people you work with. And of course, these values are going to be a reflection of your own. You want to build a business where all employees, vendors, and customers share these same characteristics, behaviors, and traits. Otherwise, you're just in it for the money, and that's not the kind of business we're building. At times, it seems like giving examples triggers people's thinking in a different way. Instead of traditional one-word values, they start thinking in real-world language instead of just respect. It helps them break out of the traditional corporate way core values have been approached. I think it's just because I've done this 100 or 200 times. Yeah, they do end up being short phrases or words that are supported by a short phrase, something that captures the essence. I don't know about using examples in a structured way. It might be a good crutch for a coach who hasn't done this as much. I personally don't find it necessary, but maybe that's because I'm already giving examples verbally throughout the conversation. When you're facilitating this, you're naturally leading the conversation, sometimes even drawing conclusions and writing really sharp phrases on the board. When you're combining words, you're often rewording things in a way that just clicks for the team. You say, this and this seem really similar. What if we word it this way? And suddenly the whole room is like, oh God, yeah, that's perfect. We love that. That captures both of these. That's happening all the time. I think of that as part of facilitating the conversation efficiently. We can't take 3 hours to do this. We have an hour and a half, and I take a more active role in combining, wordsmithing, and proposing phrases. I'm participating in a way that I wish the whole room would participate. That's how I justify it. I'm leading by example. This is how I want them to be participating, and I'm also saving time. When they are stuck, I move things forward. I make it okay for things not to be perfect. We're just trying to get everything 80% done because we're going to revisit it on Bloom Day 90. If we don't push forward now, someone will inevitably get stuck and become a stickler for minor details, which will slow everything down. It's also really important to remind people that this is not marketing. These core values are not for outside eyes. We don't recommend putting them on your website. This is an internal HR tool, a filter for the people inside the company and for the vendors and customers you choose to work with. If they already have core values, you could do a strength test on their values. The exercise consists of 3 quick questions. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do we love our core values? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do we live our core values? Do we have the right core values? Of course, after core values discovery, you go up to page 1 of the client workbook and check the box. Core values discovery is now complete. Next up is taking another inspiring pass at the KPIs created on Bloom Day 90, where the 3-year future, 1-year plan, quarterly, and weekly KPIs were created. As a reminder, KPIs are distinct from the 3-year future possibilities, the 1-year plan goals for the year, and the quarterly priorities set on Bloom Day 1. We will be building out the 3-year future possibility and 1-year goals for the year later in today's session. KPIs are the numbers-based outcomes. Quarterly priorities are special projects. Bring up the growth plan in the software and ask, you've had some time to sleep on it since Bloom Day 30. Are the 3-year future, 1-year plan, and quarterly KPIs still the right data required for the regular growing of the business? The intention here is that we can forecast and make informed proactive decisions through leading indicators. Will these numbers do that for us? Is there any data we are missing or new data to consider? You'll then facilitate a conversation and make updates as needed. Keep the conversation moving and facilitate in such a way that the team is not in the weeds. These are our best guesses. We'll continue iterating throughout the Bloom journey. Next, bring up the Bloom Weekly KPIs created on Bloom Day 30. The team will have had 30 days to track an update in the software. There will be missing data and incomplete numbers. There will be metrics in the red, and they won't know why. They won't yet be generating 2 O&Os per week from their KPIs, and you need to get them sold on why this tool works that way. They have to see that getting the right data in every week allows them to identify at least 2 O&Os each week. That's a critical part of their Bloom Weekly meeting. Okay, nice, we got one more done. Let's go back and check off the Update KPIs box. Now, moving on to the 5-year vision. You just want to review it for 5 minutes. Half the time, the magic happened when this was created on day 1 and then revisited on day 30. By now, maybe 80% of the time, it's just a rubber stamp exercise, making sure everyone hears it again. Somebody has probably forgotten about it since day 30, and I wouldn't expect much revision work at this point. You can choose to go back to page 1 to check off 5-year vision, or wait until you complete the 3-year future and do both at the same time. Now, on to the 3-year future. In addition to the 3-year numbers-based KPIs, what 10 to 15 phrases provide a vivid vision or paint your ideal future? These 10 to 15 phrases are an aggregate, not per person. In doing this exercise, partnership is key. It's about enrolling your teammates into your future and seeing how they can help achieve that ideal future. Experiencing partnership might be a better way to phrase it. This is used for recruiting, onboarding, and retaining top talent. You're selling the future. The context is that things are great today, and look how much more exciting it's going to be in the next 24 to 36 months. This vision is updated every year at the Bloom Annual, so at any given time, the 3-year future will always be 24 to 36 months into the future. It's the right amount of distance from the annual goals so that it remains a guiding force. 2/3 of your teammates are visual learners, so you want to paint a vivid picture with words. What does the company look like in 3 years? You've hit your 3-year revenue goal. What does it look like? These are possibilities, not promises, that you're creating right now. That takes a lot of the pressure off having it be perfect. They do not need to be quantifiable. As in numbers-based KPIs, they do need to be exciting for your teammates. The audience for this is your people. What future possibilities are true that would have all your employees stay? What I'm looking for from everyone in the room is 5 answers each. It depends on how many people are in the room, but the goal is to start with about 30 total so we can consolidate it down to 10 or 15. If there are 6 people on the team, 5 apiece is perfect. If there are 3 people, encourage them to give 8 or 10 each. If there are 10 people, limit them to 4 each. The most important thing is to coach them to get into their employees' heads, looking at the future of the business and what would be truly exciting for employees. Phrases like promotion from within are often simple and exciting for teammates. Things like compensation and benefits continue to be industry leading or compensation and benefits continue to improve are strong examples. Again, these are possibilities, not promises, but they reflect leadership's intent. If a company only matches 1% on a 401k right now, they might say, as we hit our profitability targets, it's our intention to one day match 5%. That could be within 3 years as profitability milestones are reached. If the company doesn't offer health insurance, and that's a big deal to employees, they might say, by 36 months from now, we will have health insurance. Statements like growth provides fresh growing opportunities for everyone get into the mindset of employees, looking at the future of the business and capturing all the things that are possible and exciting. You are selling employees on staying, not just because it's great now, but because the next 24 to 36 months will be even better. Now, give them some time. This will take a little longer than 3 to 5 minutes, probably 5 to 7. Encourage them to start writing while you're doing the intro. All the things I just said, reading through the bullet points and giving examples. Let them write while you talk, especially once you start giving examples. If you want to have a list of 10 examples written on a piece of paper in the room with you when you're doing this the first dozen times, that makes sense to me. You would read through those. By now, they've written down their numbers 4, 5, 6, 7, however many you requested from each person. Of course, some people will give more. Now, pull up Bloom on the screen and go around the room. The easiest way to facilitate this is by taking one idea per person at a time. Ask, what's your best idea? Once they give it, you quickly confirm. That makes sense, right? And type it directly into Bloom Growth under the 3-year future. Then move to the next person. What's your best idea? Then the third person says, well, my top 2 ideas were already taken by the first 2 people. Of course, this is how it goes. Ask, well, what's your third best idea? And keep going. You go around the room about 2.5 times. Let them know it's okay to tap out once their ideas have already been added to the growth plan in the software. Check them off your list as they come up. By the time you've gone around the room about 2.5 or 3 times, all the ideas will be up. Some people will have tapped out. That's okay. Ask, did we capture all your ideas? If they say yes, move on. It's a fast way to get this done in 60 minutes. You're only aiming for 80% right anyway. This is something that can be updated anytime when you're together as a team. It's not set in stone. These are possibilities and they help guide annual goal setting. Now look at the list. We want to get this down to 10 to 15. How many do we have here? 18? Ask, are there any of these you aren't in love with? Could I erase 3 of these right now? If not, and the conversation drags, let it go. Fine, keep all 18. We'll check in on it next time we're together. If you have extra time, get them talking. What's most exciting about this list? What do you think your employees or teammates will be most excited about? Between these phrases and the KPIs you already built on Bloom Day 30, it starts to frame your future. That's how this is done. And I'll tell you what, as soon as I tried this method of going around the room and entering ideas directly into Bloom, it shaved 30 minutes off the facilitation of this exercise. We used to write them all on the board and then go through the process of kill, keep, and combine. It was time-consuming, involved way too much writing, and dragged things out. Please do it the way I'm coaching you to do it now. It will go so much smoother, and by the time you're done, the work is already on the growth plan in Bloom. No extra steps. Once you've completed the 3-year future, go up to page 1 of the client workbook, check it off, and move on to annual goals. Flipping back to where we are in the client workbook, setting annual goals is something you guys are already really good at. This is not different from setting quarterly priorities, which you've already done once with this client on day 1. You'll do it again with them on day 90, and every time you see them after that. Setting annual goals and quarterly priorities will eventually become second nature. The goal is to define the 5 to 7 most important things the entire organization must accomplish by the end of the year to stay on track for the 3-year future. Depending on what month of the year you're in, you'll have a quick conversation about which year end you're setting goals for. Generally, if it's August or later in 2025, you're going to set annual goals for the end of 2026. If it's July or earlier, you'll set goals for the end of 2025. You never set annual goals for anything less than 4 or 5 months. It wouldn't make sense, because you're also setting quarterly priorities on day 90, covering that same time period. So sometimes these annual goals will cover 6 to 12 months if you're setting them between January and July. Other times, they'll cover 13 to 16 months if you're setting them between August and December. It's a simple adjustment, and you'll get the hang of it. It's just a quick conversation at the start to clarify which year end you're working toward. Once that's clear, you'll pull up the entire O&O list and review the parking lot where additional obstacles and opportunities have been noted. Then you'll look at the 3-year future you just created and the annual KPIs. Remember, when you created KPIs on day 30, do not duplicate the annual KPIs here. These annual goals are projects, not metrics. You already have KPIs that define the goals you're tracking, so don't clutter this list by repeating them. Those KPIs are going to come true. By tracking your weekly KPIs, you will complete them, which will lead to meeting your quarterly KPIs, and ultimately, that will roll up to achieving your annual KPIs. These annual goals are not just about hitting those annual KPIs. Sometimes they remove obstacles or leverage opportunities that help reach those KPIs, but they are not meant to duplicate them. They are about choosing projects that build a better business. When setting the annual goals, always choose by what is most important. not what is interesting, urgent, or easy. Annual goals are special projects, things that build a better business. It's about implementing new software in a department, hiring a key person, or improving a process. I often get questions like, should we include filing taxes as an annual goal? The answer is no. That's part of your regular job, and regular responsibilities do not belong in annual goals. However, there are exceptions. If it's the finance person's first time filing taxes for the company, if they are using a new process, a new system, or working with a new team, then yes, it could be included as an annual goal or a quarterly priority. If it's just business as usual, it does not belong here. Regular job responsibilities do not get listed as annual goals or quarterly priorities. This whole conversation about annual goal setting and quarterly priority setting is nearly identical. It's the same process, and you will get very good at it with repetition. How many goals you ask for from each person depends on how many people are in the room. If you have 7 or 8 people, don't ask for 5 to 7 ideas each, ask for 4 or 5 each. If it's a 3-person team, insist they give at least 7 ideas each so you get a total of at least 20 ideas on the board. Ideally, the total number of ideas should be around 30. So take 30 and divide it by the number of people in the room. That's how many ideas you should ask from each person. You're going to write all the ideas on the board, and as you go, you'll take all 7 ideas from the first person before moving on to the next. Unlike the 3-year future, you're not going around the table one at a time. Ask them to give you the short version, a 3 to 5 word headline for each goal. As you're writing the headline on the board, remind the team that the details are important for them to clarify in their notes. But you're only writing the headline. If they want to make it quantifiable, tell them to include that in their prep. Make sure they've looked through all the resources, the O&O list, the parking lot, the 3-year future, and the KPIs. This process usually happens in 3 steps. First, make a brainstorm list of all the possible annual goals, which is typically 9 to 12 ideas. Then, prioritize the top 7. Finally, make them specific and measurable. You don't need to follow the entire SMART goal acronym, but they do need to be specific and measurable. Ask them what the outcome will look like in a quantifiable way. Have them write that down in their notes. It's important that their brains are thinking that way. It will take them a while to come up with 7 ideas and make them specific, typically about 14 minutes from the time I stop talking. I set a clock for 12 to 14 minutes, walk around the room, and make sure everyone is on task. I use this time to refill my water, check on logistics, or take a quick bathroom break. Then I start walking around, looking at what they're writing. Almost every time, someone will have put their pen down thinking they're done. I look over their shoulder and ask, could you make these all a little more specific and measurable? These are great ideas for annual goals, but what will the outcome look like by 12/31? Most teams will use a calendar year end of 12/31. Some will have a different fiscal year end, which is fine. Just set goals for whatever their fiscal year end is. Once the first person gives you their 5 to 7 ideas, write down the 3 to 5 word headline for each one. As they say the goal out loud, they should also state how they would make it specific and measurable. While they're talking, you keep writing. Do not let a side conversation start. As soon as you finish writing the first one, say, okay, give me your second one. Start writing that one. While you're writing, they should be saying how to make it specific and measurable. Then move on. Betty, what's your third one? Keep going at a steady pace. This is the perfect flow. Your fourth one, great, you write it down. You keep going until you've got all 5 to 7 from Betty. Then you move on to Fred, who's sitting next to Betty. Fred, the first thing I'd like you to do, this is for everyone in the room, look through your list and check which ones of yours are duplicates in spirit with what's already on the board. When you wrote down Betty's, you didn't use bullet points. You numbered them 1 through 5 or 1 through 7. Now, Fred, tell me which of yours are duplicates, and I'll put a dot next to those numbers. Everybody, start doing this right now. Fred says 3 of mine are duplicates. Okay, which ones? He says 1 is a duplicate of number 1, another is a duplicate of number 2, and another is a duplicate of number 5. You put a dot next to each of those numbers. Did you have anything different in the way you made number 1 specific and measurable? Fred says, yeah, I had it written like this. You write that down, appending what you wrote from Betty with Fred's version. On number 2? Fred says it's exactly the same as Betty's. Okay, moving on. On number 5? Fred says, yeah, I thought we could track it this way. It's a little different. You write that down knowing it'll save time later when you're making them specific and measurable together. Now that you've captured Fred's duplicates, ask him for his new ones. Number 8, Fred's new one. You write the headline while he explains how to make it specific and measurable. Number 9, another new one. You write the headline, he explains, and you write it down. No dead space in the room. Everyone is actively thinking about how to make these specific and measurable. Now you move on to Sally. Sally, you probably have even more duplicates than Fred did, given that you're third around the table. Which ones are duplicates? Sally is proud. Most of hers are already up there. I've got duplicates on 5 of my 6. Okay, which ones? You put a dot next to them. Did you have any additional details for making them specific and measurable? She says, I thought we could measure it like this. You write that down. Then ask, do you have any fresh ones? Anything not up here yet? Yeah, this one. It's number 13 on the list now. You write down number 13. That's interesting. You start paying attention to who is thinking strategically about the whole business versus who keeps slipping back into just running their department. Then you get to the 4th person. All right, tell me how many of yours are duplicates. The team is aligned. The 4th person says, I only have 1 duplicate. And then when they give you all of it, you go through and mark the duplicates, then get their fresh ones. Sometimes their fresh ones are department goals, and you can decide whether to nudge them, point it out, or just let it slide. It depends on how confident that person is, how the team dynamic is, and how you're managing the room. Sometimes you just let it slide. You don't even mention to the whole room that this person's goals are more incremental, tactical, and department-focused. Other times, depending on who the person is, you might see value in pointing it out as a teaching moment, but only if you can do it without embarrassing them or making them shut down. You have to make that call as a coach or facilitator. Now, you've gone all the way around the room, and you have a full list on the board. Out of the 30 potential answers, the numbered list has likely only reached 16 or 17 because of all the duplicates. Grab a different color marker and look at all the items that have at least 1 dot next to them. Usually, in a list like this, 3 of them are no-brainers. They have to be in the top 7 for the entire organization for the year. And that's how you phrase it, entire organization for the whole year. That way, you're being inclusive of nonprofits and different business structures. You pick those 3 first, and they get picked quickly. Do not let them start a conversation. They will be itching to talk about these. Get the 3 picked fast, then say, okay, let's start at the top. Now, you'll ask the same question over and over, and they will concisely tell you or have a short conversation. We already chose number 1, right? Number 2 on the list. Is this going to be in the top 7 most important things for your entire organization for the entire year, yes or no? If it's 8th or below, it could be a quarterly project or quarterly priority for some quarter. Yes or no, folks? Shout it out. Help me out here. I can't pick these for you. You have to get them talking, get them into the conversation. Who knows? Is this top 7 or is it 8th or below? The uncomfortable part is when 3 people in the room have dots next to it, meaning they already voted it as top 7, but the other 3 people in the room didn't. So you ask again, is it a top priority or isn't it? Half the room thinks one way, half the other. Eventually, someone makes a call. Yeah, let's try it on. Yeah, it's top 7. Okay, so then you write a 4 next to that one. Now, number 3 was already chosen, so you move down to the 4th one. You ask the same question. Is this top 7 most important for your entire organization for the entire year, yes or no? If the response is no, it's not dot, you don't erase anything, just put a simple line through it. That can still go into the parking lot and become a great quarterly priority sometime next year. Next one. Is this top 7 most important? Everyone agrees, you write a 5 next to it. Now, you've got 2 more slots to fill, but you don't have to fill them. Fewer is sometimes better. If these 5 were the only annual goals, that would be perfectly fine. But you go through the rest of the list. Is this one top 5 to 7 most important, yes or no? Keep the same process going. Is this one top 5 to 7? They will want to start talking about everything at this point. They'll want to start debating. You have to keep moving. We're not making them specific and measurable yet. We're just trying to pick them, so let's keep moving. If something meaningful comes up that's not related, add it to the O&O list and keep going. Do whatever you need to facilitate the conversation and keep it moving. Do not let them go off on tangents. Do not go down rabbit holes. This is towards the end of the day. Everyone's tired, and distractions will come easily. You have to push through. You'll update these annual goals later. Right now, they just need to be 80% right, maybe even 70% right. Keep the facilitation strong. Once you get through the list and have chosen the 5 to 7 goals, pull up Bloom and go straight to the growth plan section. Enter them right away. As you type them into Bloom, make them specific. Write the headline first, 1 to 5 words. Then put a colon and write the simplest way that this would be specific and measurable by the deadline. There are no individual names on annual goals. The entire organization owns these, so no name should be assigned. Then move on to the next one. Same process. Type the headline, put a colon, and facilitate a conversation about making it specific and measurable. Sometimes making these specific and measurable will take a lot of time. You will get sucked into tangents and rabbit holes. You have to pull them back and say, that's great. I love the enthusiasm for this one. This is going to be exciting when it's done. But what does done look like? How will we know? What can we measure? What's specific and measurable about the result? This is not a project management meeting. We are not figuring out how to accomplish this goal right now. You have time to get this done. You will talk about it a ton in the future, but not right now. Right now, simply decide on the specific and measurable outcome. Get it to 80% right. You'll fine-tune them at day 90. Share with the team. Don't share these goals with anyone outside the leadership team yet. We want the ability to change our minds when we're together next time. As a facilitator, your job is to keep them moving. Give them just enough space to get a solid, specific, and measurable statement. In a perfect world, each goal takes 2 to 4 minutes of discussion to make it sharp. If each one takes 10 minutes, you will not finish on time. This is completely possible to finish in 90 minutes. Once everything is typed into Bloom, move on. Go up to the agenda on page 1 and check off annual goals. Now, we dive into the ideal leadership team structure. This is now the 3rd time you're discussing this with the client. When you launched it on Bloom Day 1, you asked, a year from now, what does it look like? Then on day 30, you moved it forward, refined it, and added some names. You pull it up in Bloom, have it up on the screen, and start working with the software. This conversation happens in 3 stages. First, you update the boxes or seats. That naturally morphs into updating, tweaking, and refining roles and responsibilities. And then you have people's names in the seats, but some people in the room still don't have their name in any box. And some people have their name in 3 boxes, and it's uncomfortable. That's normal. You're going to take the tension out of the room by reminding them that this is about working for the greater good of the organization. This is a leadership team structure that they will be moving toward within the next 10 to 12 months. This conversation started on day 1, and the goal is to move to this structure methodically based on their resources and what will accelerate the growth of the business. That's the chart conversation. As soon as you've made slight updates to the seats, roles, and responsibilities and people, you're going to run them through a quick tool where some very candid, confidential conversations will happen. The goal is to determine if everyone whose name is in a box is truly the right person. For example, the owner is probably in 3 boxes, and you're going to ask, which one do you do the worst? They'll probably say all 3 of them. Then you ask the team, which one is he really bad at? That's how you start getting clarity. This naturally morphs into a hiring roadmap. Next, you'll use an evaluation tool that factors in their core values, which they just created, their roles and responsibilities, and ideally how well they are executing on their quarterly priorities. These quarterly priorities are the special projects they've been working on for 60 days to build a better business. This tool will eventually be the same tool used to lead quarterly alignment conversations and train leaders on evaluating their team. Once you go through the tool, natural conclusions will emerge. Some things will be added to the long-term O&O list, while others will go on the short-term O&O list for immediate action. When you're together again on day 90, you will finalize this structure and get it to 90 to 100% right, so it is ready to be presented to employees. That will also give them 9 months to make all the necessary people moves to bring this structure to life. As soon as the ideal future is clear, they'll want to move toward it as quickly as possible. But that will depend on people and money. A good rule of thumb is 1 meaningful people move per quarter. That might mean shuffling someone to a new role, shifting responsibilities, hiring someone, or letting someone go. Usually in a growth business, it's not about letting people go. In a growth business, you need all the people you currently have, and you need more good people soon. Nobody in the room is facing a reduction in pay or being fired in this conversation. Sometimes someone in the room doesn't fit the leadership team structure, but will still be in that department, reporting to the person who does. This can be delicate and hard on a person's ego. Stay in the conversation for the greater good of the firm. Trust that when you're in the perfect seat for you, your career opportunities are bigger and better than if you're forcing yourself into the wrong role. Whether that seat is on the leadership team or within a department, the right fit will always be better than trying to make something work that isn't a natural fit. As a coach, you're responsible for easing the tension in the room, keeping people comfortable enough to stay engaged instead of withdrawing or getting defensive. If you notice someone pulling back, checking out, or shutting down, you have to soften the conversation, reassure them, and pull them back in with questions. You can't let someone sit there sulking and mentally exit the process. Regardless of whether it looks like they'll have a seat on the leadership team, encourage them to stay engaged through day 90. After that, decisions will be made about roles and how they fit into the process. From that point forward, the weekly leadership team meetings and quarterly offsites will be for those who are officially in seats on the leadership team chart. This part of the process requires a high level of sensitivity from you as a coach. You need to reassure them, bring comfort where needed, but also be direct and fair. Resist the urge to draw conclusions for them. With core values, it's normal to help them combine ideas and shape the language for speed and clarity. But when it comes to people, seats, and roles, you need to step back into pure facilitator mode. Make sure all decisions about people come from them. You will use the tools and lead the conversations, but you are not making decisions. You're never going to say something like, "Well, Pat, it just doesn't seem like there's a place for you on the leadership team." That is for them to figure out as a team. Your role is to guide the conversation, not make those calls. This is just not your role, and it is so dangerous if you start offering your opinion. You are a resource for them, not a decision maker. I have tested the boundaries of this 30 or 40 different times with leadership teams, and trust me, there is no space in the room for you to dictate decisions about people. Your role is to facilitate a conversation where there is usually natural consensus. If there isn't, you call on the person running the business to decide. You ask them to make the decision in the meeting. If they prefer to have side conversations before finalizing it, that's fine. They can mark it TBD and have a final answer by day 90. That's it for the org chart. One more thing for you as a coach. This is one of the most difficult things to facilitate. There is tons of nuance. Every team is like a snowflake, totally unique in their structure, culture, and challenges. You have to be on your game, facilitating, staying curious, asking the right questions, and helping them navigate uncertainty. There will be fear, doubt, and discomfort in the room. That's part of the process. One of the reasons you're getting paid well is because you can facilitate through this discomfort and help them make great choices. You can help them with choosing seats and defining roles and responsibilities. Do not help them with who goes in which seat. You can say things like, the most important characteristic of this leader is going to be their ability to lead, manage, and help all their direct reports win because they oversee so much payroll. That's a nudge. That's highlighting key priorities. But it's not deciding for them. You're guiding the conversation, making sure they focus on the right criteria, but they make the final call on who fits the role. Now, go back to the agenda and check off ideal leadership team structure. That was the hard part. The rest of the day is easy. That was the only section with tension. The Bloom Weekly Meeting Agenda is what's up next. You're going to go through and give a meaningful teaching about the Bloom Weekly Meeting. You can pull notes from the check-in, and you can also ask again, what's working? What's not working? With the Bloom Weekly to make sure you're covering any pain points. Strongly encourage them to ask questions and turn this into a conversation. I'm going to go pretty fast through this. The check-in is a vulnerability exercise. Each person has about 45 seconds to share their number one personal thing and either the significance of it, why it's meaningful, or how they feel about it. Then they share their most meaningful professional thing and its impact or their feelings about it. The whole point of the check-in is to allow yourself to be known. The next part is the quarterly priorities. This is what they've been working on for 60 days now. Again, this is not a project management check-in. You don't start at the top and just go down the list saying something about everything. If something is on track, you don't mention it. On track means you are 100% certain it will be completed on time as written. Anything less than 100% certain, you mark it off track, and that's where the conversation starts. The goal here is to identify 2 things to add to the O&O list, obstacles or opportunities related to these most important projects. Every week, you're identifying 2 obstacles or opportunities. Those are often the things you then get to the root cause of and discuss and decide. That's what you're doing here. So for 5 minutes under quarterly priorities, all you're doing is fishing for those two O and O's. Then you move on to the KPIs. Again, this is not a project management check-in. You don't mention the stuff that's in the green for the most part. The focus is on a group conversation about the two biggest obstacles or opportunities that should go on the O and O list. This requires a fully engaged team of strategic leaders. This is not the time to lean back and let one or two leaders on the team identify what should go on the O and O list while everyone else just listens and follows along. This is a robust conversation where everyone is involved. People should be talking over each other at times because they're so eager to get these things shared. That's exactly what we want during the quarterly priorities and KPIs discussion. Each one gets 5 minutes of a real engaged conversation. Sometimes you'll add more than 2 things to the O and O list, but really dig for 2 every week. This is how the quarterly priorities actually get done, by continuously addressing obstacles and opportunities that are in the way. It's also how you keep your KPIs in the green and ensure you're hitting your numbers by the end of the quarter. This conversation has to be candid, open, and honest. Everybody needs to be in it. It's not an argument, but it's a conversation with energy. Someone should be saying, yeah, we have to put that on the list. Another person might say, we just put it on the list last week. And the response could be, yeah, but I don't think we solved the root cause. Put it on the list again. We need to talk about it again. These things stay on the list until they are fully removed or leveraged. It's okay if something was solved 2 weeks ago, you might need to go back in and solve it a different way. The goal is all hands on deck, identifying obstacles and opportunities for the quarterly priorities and KPIs and solving them in a permanent, inspiring way. That's how these priorities actually become true green and done. Next, you move into headlines. Hopefully by now, they've been trained by you to enter about 3 headlines per leader per week. They should have Bloom open daily, and at the top of the black bar, there's that little shout-out space where they can add headlines anytime. These are meant to capture every small thing, so the team has 15 to 25 pre-populated items in Bloom. At this point, you're gonna have Bloom up on the screen. For headlines, you speed read through them, 10 seconds each, for the 15 or 20 that are pre-populated. It's like drinking from a fire hose of information about what's going on within the business. The whole team becomes completely in the know about everything, big and small, meaningful or insignificant, personal or professional. Oh, so-and-so told me her daughter is pregnant, she's going to be a grandmother for the first time. That's the kind of stuff that's on here. Oh, I talked to that one client about that late shipment, and they're completely delighted now. It's all okay. Just everyday stuff that the whole team should know about. When any of the other 100 employees talk to leadership, the impression they walk away with is exactly what's true. That the leadership team is fully in the know about what's happening across the business. This week is Joe's 20th anniversary here. We're going to have cupcakes and sing later. Everyone in the building that day should come down. Oh, what day is it? Everybody pulls out their calendar. Yeah, I'm in. I'm putting it on my calendar now. I'll be there to celebrate Joe. It's that kind of stuff. 90% of this is good news. The 10% that isn't usually results in 1 new O&O each week. Someone will say, we should talk about that. Make sure that in your Bloom Coach Weeklies, you're populating these headlines regularly, practicing what I'm preaching every week. This is where I want you to have first-hand experience in running a perfect Bloom Weekly. You're rotating who runs the meeting and who handles the tech every week, using your weekly with Isaiah as a way to perfect this. That way, when you're training teams on it, you're speaking from experience, not just parroting what I'm saying. That's the headlines. It's an incredible 5 minutes of the meeting. It makes me feel so grounded and fully aware of what's going on, everything professional and personal that's happening in the business. And of course, not everything is pre-written. People pop in with things they didn't even think to share. Holy buckets, I didn't even think to tell you guys, but so-and-so had a grandkid last week. Oh yeah, they work from home. Let's make sure to reach out to them. Should we send them a gift? Put it on the O&O list, gift for Sally. Okay, great. Moving on. You're aiming for about 10 seconds per headline, making sure to add at least 1 thing from the headlines to the O&O list. Then you go through the to-dos. The goal is always 90% completion. That's the gold standard. You check the percentage and see where the team is at. The whole team is skimming the to-do list, asking any questions about things that were done or not done. Someone says, oh, you got that thing done this week? Sweet, what happened? What did they say? Maybe it was a call to a client and you just want to know how it went. Got it. Oh, okay, you left 2 voicemails. You didn't actually talk to them? Let's uncheck it then. That has to be a to-do again this week. If the team hits 90%, awesome. Celebrate it. Snap, clap, acknowledge the win. These are the most sacred promises the team makes to each other. This isn't a list of everything they're gonna do this week. Everyone does 100 things a week, but these 3 to 5 to-dos are the highest priority commitments to the team. They often come out of the O&O process, but not always. Sometimes it's just as simple as, hey Fred, I need you to get that thing to me this week. I actually could have used it last week. Fred responds, yeah, I was at that conference, the trade show, all that. You say, yeah, can you just take it as a to-do? The sooner, the better. For anything you need from someone else on the team, this is the place to ask them to commit to it out loud and take it as a to-do right there in the meeting. This is an awesome tool for leaders and teammates alike. No need to go around chasing people or getting frustrated. Just assign the to-do in this meeting, and it's done. Not everything needs to be 3DD, but the most meaningful to-dos often come from working through obstacles and opportunities in a permanent, inspiring way. As you go through the to-dos, you'll usually identify at least one O&O, either something that didn't get done, revealing an obstacle, revealing an opportunity to do more of it. Add those to the O&O list. Next, you move on to the O&O list. You always prioritize by most important, never by what's urgent, interesting, or easy. You pick 3 at a time because it allows your brain to start working on the second and third ones in the background while discussing the first. It also prevents unnecessary pauses every time you need to select one, so pick 3 at once and move them to the top. Then you need to get crystal clear on 2 things. First, have about a 60-second conversation about the root cause of the issue. Second, define the outcome you need. Outcomes usually fall into a few categories: making a decision, sharing information, or gathering information. Gathering information is a little like brainstorming, and if sharing these categories with your clients helps them get into the right headspace, that's great. That's the discover portion of 3DING: discover, discuss, and decide. And it's about 60 seconds at the beginning of each discussion. Then you move into discuss and decide, where everyone participates equally. You're curious, you're courageous enough to ask the stupid questions, and everyone is fully engaged. There's no mentally coasting just because it's not your department. That's not how this works. This is a leadership team of equals, working together to remove obstacles and leverage opportunities. You spend 60 seconds on identifying the root cause and outcome, and then you race to see how many meaningful decisions you can make. Some weeks you can get through 12, 14, even 16 items. What's the root cause and outcome? Let's discuss and decide. What does the to-do look like? 3 minutes in and out for each opportunity or obstacle. Other times, one discussion will take up almost the entire meeting, 40 minutes on a single O&O, only resolving 3 total things that week. That's perfectly fine as long as it's the most important O&O, and you discuss and decide on an inspiring and permanent solve. If one O&O takes all the time, that's okay. If during the weekly meeting agenda, all the questions are about KPIs, just skip straight to KPIs and review the weekly and quarterly KPIs first, then go back to the weekly meeting agenda. These 2 things can be easily intertwined. It doesn't matter which one you start with or how you approach it. Let the conversation be directed by the leaders in the room. Solicit questions and get them participating and talking. If by day 60 you're still in full teaching mode, doing most of the talking, you're not doing it right. You're here to facilitate a conversation, not lecture. Encourage their questions, let them lead the discussion. When you're successful as a facilitator and coach in this, you'll create an engaging conversation around the Bloom Weekly, the KPIs, and all its components. That's how they're gonna learn the most. You're just one participant, molding and shaping the discussion, answering some questions, but also redirecting some. Instead of spoon-feeding answers, you'll turn questions back to the group. If someone asks a question and you know someone else in the room has the answer, redirect it. Say, that's a great question. What do you guys think? Remember, we start the journey as teachers, facilitators, and coaches. Bloom Day 1 has the highest percentage of teaching. But with each session, that percentage of teaching goes down, while your role as a facilitator and coach goes up. That's how teams fall in love with their coaches, not because you're standing there doing something to them or forcing them into a certain way of doing things, but because you're facilitating, molding, being flexible, listening, and staying curious. The real conversation is about what's standing between them and making their bloom weekly, including the KPIs, magical. The goal is for everyone to walk away with more clarity than they had at the beginning of this discussion. These are foundational tools that will continue to create more and more value as they are perfected. And we're on a journey. We're about halfway through the process, from day 1 to the time when you observe their bloom weekly on day 120. The goal is to perfect this process so that everyone in the room becomes the teacher for the rest of the organization. By day 120, you want this to be as crystal clear and aligned as possible, because you're the ones who will be teaching your departments how to run this at a masterful level. You'll also be working to get your department's team running this process within 90 to 120 days, following the same structure that I've taught you. A lot of this can be done just by asking the right questions. The goal is to get this part of their weekly meeting truly working for them. When it's working, they will be predicting whether they're gonna hit or miss their quarterly KPIs well in advance. They will be able to spot opportunities and obstacles weekly and make adjustments to nudge these numbers back on track before it's too late. When that happens, they're working together as a team to drive these numbers-based outcomes. That's what success looks like. And for sure, it's not working on day 60. Please keep your expectations low. I tell teams to set their expectations low. I say, for you to fall in love with this process, it's going to take about a year and 10 iterations. Let's just do the first one today. Ultimately, they will be making these iterations on their own. This is not just a KPI review, it's also a teaching moment. You're showing them how to iterate without you. You don't have to do this only in sessions, but we'll iterate today, and then we'll iterate again on day 90. You'll start to get the feel for what it means to iterate on this. That's the Bloom Weekly meeting. You're going to move through this quickly and focus most of your energy as a coach on the questions that come up from the team. Let their questions guide where you spend extra time. You don't need to use as many words as I just did. I want you to have all these words, though, because I don't know which part they'll have the most questions on. I went deep on each component, so you have it all, but in practice, they'll usually want to go deep on just 1 or 2 areas that are tripping them up. You won't need to explain everything at this level of detail, just the parts they need. Remind them that you'll review this again on day 90 and then audit it. Schedule a Bloom Weekly observation with the team around day 120. About 3 to 4 weeks after day 90, you'll sit in on Zoom, observe, and give feedback. This is an iterative process of improving every time. You'll see them getting better at it every week, and by day 120, you'll really see how excellent they've become at running this foundational tool, the Bloom Weekly, meeting when we are together on day 120. Then return to page 1 and check off Bloom Weekly meeting and the wrap-up. On to wrap up the day. Give everybody about 3 or 4 minutes to fill out the blanks. It's pretty self-explanatory. Their favorite, most valuable part of the day. The number one thing we could do better on day 90. I'll write those down and bring them up at the beginning of day 90, just like I did this morning. A meaningful compliment for the person on their left. When they deliver the compliment, they should square up with the person, make eye contact, and make it meaningful. It can be about them as a coworker, as a person, or as a teammate. Then quickly run through what's expected for next time. I read those things out loud, and then you go around the room and everyone says all 3 of their answers in one go. It's not one thing at a time. They say their favorite, most valuable part of the day, the number one thing to improve for day 90, and then the meaningful compliment. It happens pretty fast. You don't need to run a timer, people won't go long. It's the end of the day, and these are quick, direct questions. At the end of this, put your hands on the table with a body language that signals a sense of accomplishment. Give them a genuine, real compliment. Half the room has words of affirmation as their primary love language. This will matter to them. Say something like, "You guys, this was an inspiring day. I came away with your what, how, and why and your 3-year future, and I'm completely inspired about your future. Nice work." The pieces of Bloom growth are falling into place perfectly. Now, for the next 30 days, they're in the home stretch of their first set of quarterly priorities. They should be checking in. 2 or 3 of these should be getting done every week, starting with next week's Bloom Weekly, to ensure they come into day 90 with over 80% of their goals completed. Work together as a team. I know there are names next to each of those quarterly priorities, and yes, there's individual accountability, but this is more teamwork than ever. So make sure you're supporting each other and pushing these priorities forward as a team. Our homework for day 90 is identify and release a personal energy trap and create your value stories. And one thing I always want to mention when we're together, my business grows 100% through referrals from happy clients like you. All it takes is a simple email introduction between me and any business owner you know. I'll take care of them and treat them like gold. I appreciate anything you send my way. And with that, we are adjourned. Are you guys going to dinner after the session tonight? I can't join you this time, but I love that you're making time for this. Please plan dinner every time we're together like this. It strengthens your team and it's just a great way to end the day. Have a great quarter. You guys are on fire. Get 80% of these quarterly priorities done and start using your KPIs the way we updated them this morning. Make your weekly KPIs a truly valuable tool and ensure that these quarterly priorities actually get completed. That's all there is to do. You're wrapping this on a really positive note, letting them know they're winning and telling them how to win. Winning within this system is simple. It's not easy, but it is simple. And that concludes Bloom Day 60. Thank you.